Howdy. Welcome to the Intentional Organization podcast. This episode is about reorgs. So I've been through a few reorgs in my career, some that I have led and some that actually happened to me. And I'll be honest, none of them felt good while they were happening or while we were preparing for them. So reorgs are often pitched as kind of a clean reset, a fresh structure. It's a cost savings. It's a new way to unlock speed, efficiency, clarity. But what's rarely said out loud is how messy and emotional they are for everyone involved. There's anxiety. There's a loss of team identity. There's quiet questions like, do I still even matter here? And the truth is, a reorg isn't just a spreadsheet exercise. It's not just names in boxes and lines to connect those boxes. It's about people. It's about relationships. It's about power. And most importantly, it's about trust. And while sometimes reorgs are absolutely necessary, perhaps because the company has grown or changed or stalled, too often reorgs are treated like a magic button. You push it and everything will suddenly look better, but that's rarely how it plays out. So in this episode, Mathias and I dig into the underbelly of the reorg, why so many of them fail and fall short, why they hurt morale often more than they help, and how leaders can approach them with more honesty, care, and longer-term thinking. So if you're navigating a reorg or you're about to lead one, this episode is for you.
Hey everyone. Hey Mathias.
Hey Sara.
Well, hello. So let's see. Our topic today is reorgs. The dreaded reorg. Heavy sigh.
So much fun.
Yeah, I mean, having been part of more reorgs than I can count, I can say they are probably one of the least pleasant experiences in business. And as I was preparing for today's chat, I learned, Mathias, that something like 70 to 80% of reorgs fail.
It doesn't surprise me at all. I think this what surprises me the most about that very exact metric is that, I mean, this will be the fun part of our conversation. How do you even know whether a reorg was successful? And then on the flip side, how do you know it failed? Like, that's what I found most staggering about that data.
Kind of
Not
like
the
if
data.
a tree falls in a forest, does anyone hear it?
Okay.
We're going to dive into this topic. As you can probably tell, we're probably going to have a little bit of skepticism, probably a little snark, a little cynicism.
Or maybe a lot of all of that. Who knows?
Or maybe a lot, all of the above. But why don't we start, Mathias, with let's go high level. Like what constitutes a reorg? You know, what makes a reorg?
I mean, that's a good question. Like I've been thinking about this topic a lot, especially like in the context of coaching conversations. I myself have not been involved in like on the receiving end of a reorg. I've done a few of those. Yeah, I'm grateful for that. I mostly experience those through friends who work at larger companies where reorgs seem to be the bread and butter of some executives. But I'm already jumping a little bit too far ahead. When is a reorg happening? I mean, for me, maybe the most relevant experience I have in this is when I started at Reaction as CTO. Like, I remember the first board meeting. And I was asked, like, so any changes you're going to make? Like, no, I'm just want to see how everything's working. And I can't really confidently say any of that after just 90 days. Like I have some idea of what's going on after 90 days, but not enough. And I think, yeah, there seems to be like a general expectation that, especially as a senior leader or an executive comes in, that they are going to make changes. You know, people are let go, new people are brought in, structures are reshuffled because the assumption is that whoever had the position before set it up the wrong way, whatever that means, or it's not the right way anymore for where the company needs to go, or it just wasn't working. There's potentially new managers or lieutenants being brought in. Like if I were to start as a CTO, I could bring in my former chief architect or my former VP engineering. So I already know I have reliable people in there, and those folks are going to make their own changes. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me, and it's probably the most painful one because like there's such a stigma almost. Like there's such a weird expectation that this is happening. And this is probably where we get to the win, where it's like it seems like an establishing of authority. Right? I'm making my early mark based on the assumption that I know what the right way is. And even though I've only been here for 2 weeks, I know that my way is the correct way. I already understand after only 2 weeks what this organization needs, which to me is very preposterous. But that's to me the first thing that comes to mind, which is just which is also where folks get cynical, or it's like, oh, you've got a new CTO reorg. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I in my mind I was thinking, okay, when is a reorg appropriate? Like reorgs, if there is let's say a shift in a strategy, sometimes that might require, changing kind of the structure of the team and the focus of the team and kind of the leadership and the management. I think sometimes that would make sense. Or let's say the business is growing, the team is growing. Naturally, you probably need to start to structure and organize the team differently. And
Yeah.
what you're pointing out, I've seen it so many times. New leadership comes in and, they have this mandate, let's reorganize the team without really thinking about the human costs of that. And
Yeah.
in fact, most likely 70 to 80% it's not going to be effective. In fact,
Yeah.
it's going to cause a lot of harm near term and maybe even, mid to long term. And so yeah, I think like, yeah, when is it a reorg? You said when team structures, change significantly. Yeah, that's a reorg. Even if a manager is, moving over to another pod, or
Yeah.
and a new manager is coming in, but the core team and the leadership thinks, oh, the core team's staying the same. Like, oh no, the core team's not staying the same. Like
Yeah.
leadership, like the team DNA, the whole construct of the team is shifting, even with one person coming in or coming out, right?
You could get very philosophical about like what is truly a reorg. Is even a reorg when you add a new hire to the team, right? In some way, what you have at the end is a new team, and not the team that was before. And it's a new team that somehow needs to regain, trust in with this new member of the team, regain or vice versa, right? That new member needs to understand how's this team tick, how do they work, especially when like you're a new hire. There's even more around the entire organization that you need to learn. It's a fascinating one to me. I'm not sure I have a perfect answer to that
Yeah, I don't know
question.
if I do either. Like reorg, maybe there's different levels of reorg, but any change to a team, a senior leader coming in, a junior, more individual contributor moved, the team split into two, and the
Yeah.
team is being reorganized around that shift. Now, what we're referring to though is probably maybe the bigger reorgs where multiple moves are happening, teams are being shifted to different areas of focus, or people are being moved to different managers and maybe different pods. But I think the point is, if the change is small or big, it's still going to impact the organization.
That is true.
And still
I kind of,
requires preparation.
oh yeah, and communication. I like your measurement of human cost. And I think that's, in part a subjective thing. and one where you can't put an exact number on it. When I talk to my clients about reorgs, when I think about them, and when we talk about things like what we'll get into later, when should you communicate this? How should you communicate this? What care and preparation should you put into them? What we talk about is like, what is the stress levels this will create? Right? How is this going to stress the team in terms of they start worrying about their job? They need to start worrying about taking on more responsibility when they already feel stretched thin. They have a new boss that they don't know that they need to, start getting acquainted with, or, changes in strategy that imply that whatever you've done so far has become effectively meaningless, right? Or meaningless maybe to some extreme, or it's somebody else's responsibility, or it's of no use anymore. Right? Strategy changes are one example there. And
Right.
I like the dimension of just thinking about, how much stress is this going to cost and to how many people, right? If I bring in a new person to one team, yes, there's readjustment that needs to happen, but it's usually mostly confined to that team and maybe some folks who are adjacent, depending on the role. But I like that angle thinking about it. Also, then, about everything that follows on, or even the pretext of a reorg, like what happens leading up to it, like basing that on how many people is this going to impact and how much stress is this going to create. And maybe over time, as you go from reorg to reorg, how much is this going to increase levels of cynicism in my team, which it will inevitably do.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think there's this fallacy that, you're going to make these changes and presto, you're going to have this high performing functional group of people, a functional team that's performing against this new strategy. It's like it's all just going to happen overnight. And we talk about this in our book. But, there's a framework or a principle, if you will. It's forming, storming, norming, performing. That's sorry, yeah. Forming, like you kind of got to go through these sequences. The team has to form, and before they can actually like get into performing, they have to kind of go through these steps of establishing relationships and establishing boundaries and establishing how they're going to collaborate and ways of working together. And that has to start over when you reorg.
And yeah, it might have to start over for many teams across maybe even different departments. Yeah. I think the other thing I think about when I think about reorgs is when job descriptions change significantly. Even when I think maybe you could lump that in with other things that we talked about, like, refocusing a team, teams getting a new lead, or people moving to other parts of the organization. Sometimes change in jobs and job descriptions, job titles, or responsibilities might be implied, but not always. And the struggle is sometimes to just really understand what is a reorg to people. When is it one? When is it one to me as, say, the executives? And when I as an executive deem something not to be a reorg, will it still be perceived as a reorg by the team? And I think in a way, job descriptions, there needs to be a reason. Whether that reason is like we do have a new strategy, and based on that, some functions need to change and responsibilities change, or even worse, like we swap out like an entire group of people and bring in new people in their stead. And I mean, of course, the worst one of them that does sometimes happen is like when an organization is dissolved entirely.
Right.
Even there, people might move to different parts of the org. They might be let go, but there is a gaping hole in the organization suddenly that, again, creates stress levels. It makes people talk, gossip, rumor, be cynical, especially when they don't understand why this is happening or why there was no alternative.
Yep. The gossip mill is strong. When you're dissolving a team or a business unit or a function, people are talking. I won't say names, but a company I was with, there was someone who said that her main job was moving people's names around on a spreadsheet every quarter, meaning, this is like 1,000+ person company where people were being, reorged, reorg planning, and it just had such a high cost. It was just this like
Yeah.
expectation. People were just walking on eggshells, like what's going to happen? And it was happening regularly. Another example that you brought up is like, companies get acquired. Reaction Commerce got
Hmm.
acquired. Of course, like it's a massive shift for the team and
Yeah.
management changes and org changes, and then we got acquired again, and
Pretty
um,
much everything changes. Yes. And there's a
everything.
fallout from an acquisition then that happens that is about
Right,
combining efforts and finding efficiencies, whatever that means, or even eliminating product lines,
right,
which is
right.
just, yes, acquisitions have reorgs all written all over them. They pretty
I
much
don't know
cover
the
all of
stat.
it.
I should have looked this one up there. But yeah, most acquisitions aren't successful. I think
Yeah.
partly because of this, right? Because you're merging two company cultures together. There's massive shifts in people's job responsibilities and team structures. Every team structure is changing. There's a reason why there's a whole industry around mergers and acquisition, because it's so challenging.
Yeah. Interesting part is like culture is usually what is, maybe at the bottom of the spreadsheet. But it's also something where you sometimes you don't know until you know,
Right.
right? And then it's too late,
Yeah.
unfortunately. In my speed coaching sessions, like the post acquisition, the fallout is what has been a frequent topic, like
Right.
where people are not certain and they have no support or help in navigating, even finding ways to eliminate somebody else's work
Right.
and getting them on board with that idea, right? That's not a fun thing to consider. Like, we're going to stop working on your thing. We're going to be working on our thing, which is objectively better. Like, just, I'm jesting, but that's sometimes the spirit that these people have. Where it's like, well, you need to think about what people are losing, right? In this, that's going to be the most impactful to them, right? I mean, I think about all of the recent tech layoffs that are they just keep going, where the feeling of loss is like you show up in the morning and suddenly there's hundreds of people not there anymore that were there the day before,
Yep.
right? And you're just like, okay, so A, why am I still here? I don't understand. And B, like, when will I not be able
Yes.
to log back in?
That's a reorg in of itself, right? Everything's being reorganized. People are being laid off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I'm wondering.
Matthias, AI is going to be able to do those jobs. I had to
This
say it.
is true. They're gonna replace all of the work, and we're not hiring any new people for jobs that can be done using AI. I mean, that part I feel very cynical about, but
Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast, right?
that's all. I was talking about this at a different recording earlier today, and it is gnarly to think about. And I mean, it's just who knows where all of this is going to go. It just seems like a very strange hype
Yeah.
cycle. But anyway.
Maybe we should shift into how can reorgs be done better? Like, it comes down to communication. But let's talk a little bit about what what could be done differently to maybe improve the odds that a reorg could be successful.
One more step back and talking about like what people think they're trying to achieve with reorgs. I've had several conversations about this with leaders, and one that I come across quite regularly that especially happens where the team reaches a certain threshold in size or where something isn't working anymore. Like the product development feels slow. That's one that's come up for me. And so we're changing the entire team structure. We're changing
We're not moving
uh,
fast enough. We have to
yeah,
make a
we're
change.
exactly. Do you really understand why you're not moving fast enough, right? What was actually happening before? And then is there an alternative, maybe an easier way, or one that isn't as stressful and doesn't have a big human cost that we could take instead? Like a reorg is the seemingly the easiest one. And sometimes that comes with a shift in strategy where that can make sense. I think we've thought about adjusting team structures as we shifted our strategy, and I think that's okay. It just becomes a
Yeah.
weird thing when strategy changes every 6 months,
Yes.
and so does then
That's the problem. Right.
reorgs happen accordingly.
Right. Yeah. So what are the things that the reorgs trying to achieve? So obviously we talked about shift in strategy.
And new
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 leadership.
senior leader coming in. Yeah.
So the team's growing. There's, people being hired, new managers, new leaders, or even new ICs.
True.
Yeah.
As
Yep.
sometimes you need to put in a new management layer, and that could be a reorg.
Yep.
But I mean, there's an obvious reason for that one. I mean, and it's probably has a higher chance of success as most of the other ones. Like,
Right.
mm-hmm.
There's also resolving an issue with a team. So we've talked a little bit about, maybe there's a conflict within a team, whether it's a personal or a difference of opinion or a different
Uh-huh.
approaching things and can't work together. And that might require, moving some folks around. It's not always a guarantee. This issue that's coming up, let's move it over here.
Yeah.
And then the issue just moves over there, right?
Yeah, it feels like the ultimate like authority parachute in to save the day. It's like, you two can't sort this out. I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna
Yeah.
move you apart, or we're gonna move you to on the same level, so that neither of you can pull some sort of authority card. Like shifting a hierarchy shouldn't ideally be how you solve interpersonal issues. Like, it
Definitely
seems
not.
seems so simplistic. And I mean, this. How do we know this is going to work? Like, is there less bickering? I don't know. Feels like a pretext sometimes to letting somebody go.
Right.
Which might in some ways be the healthier thing to do, even
Right.
though I don't say that lightly. Um, yeah, interpersonal conflicts, or when decision-making issues are there, when people are pulling hierarchy and rank cards, or they can't actually decide what are we going to do, what is important, what are we going to work on. So you shift the hierarchy again, so that either you make the decision as their boss or somebody else does. It's like, this is,
Yeah.
instead of maybe thinking about the decision-making process, or as you say, like all the context, the strategy that influences that is somehow leading to these folks coming to these very divergent decisions. I think we might be uncovering a pattern here.
There seems to be some patterns. Yeah. I've seen where whole teams get moved under different executive leadership areas. So an example, I saw an entire product analytics org moved from the product org over to the CFO's org, because it's all about, business metrics and KPIs. And that's a massive shift. It changes not even of the team structure
Yeah.
staying intact, kind of. Obviously, the leader of product analytics is getting a new manager, new boss, new reporting line. But what's changing is for every single team who interacts with product analytics, they now have it's a different way of working. And
Yeah.
that's just one example, where you're merging or you're kind of recombining teams, you're shifting them over parts of the org. I've seen product design also move from a design org over to a product org over to a marketing org. It happens so regularly. And I think I just keep going back to, we neglect to really think about the human cost. And I like, Matthias, what you said about like, maybe that's what we need to really track. How many humans are going to be impacted by this change? Both the immediate change, the immediate team, and then the surrounding teams, right?
Yeah, and I think with like moving an entire org to somebody else, like you're just, in the hierarchically in a structure speaking, like nothing changes. Job descriptions might not even change, but expectations might, right? Or the
Right.
leadership style, like how these expectations are set and communicated, that might change entirely, right? And expectations might change, the strategy might change, the approach might change, how involved the new boss is in day-to-day work, right? That's stressful to think about. Like, I can,
Yeah. Do you now want to shift into sort of how we can improve when we communicate and how we communicate a reorg?
let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the win is a little challenging for larger orgs. my high level answer to that is, I think it's really important to get ahead of the rumor mill,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to really plan out and map out a communication timeline and a communication strategy, and to communicate as early as possible. Now, my caveat there is I do know that there are sometimes, some confidential things, some things that, you can't necessarily share
Hmm.
early. If people are being laid off, or if, like there's things that just can't be announced. So obviously, like, I get the delicate nature and the timing, but the main point is, even with that, the putting together the sequence of communication, the
Hmm.
different types of communication that's going to individuals versus groups versus managers, and then the cascade of that. How is that rolling out
Yeah.
to the broader org? And that doesn't happen overnight. You know,
Yes.
it needs a lot of attention and care and detail, and who's going to be met with individually, who's meeting with
Hmm.
team, and like I said, at what sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This plays a little bit into our previous conversation around difficult conversations. Is just, as you said, staying ahead of the rumor mill and
Yep.
planning out the communication ahead of time, and also what the level of detail, to ensure that you stay ahead
Right.
of the rumor mill, and that you also, as much as possible, address the questions and concerns that people are going to have, and maybe also get ahead of any cynicism that might, or sarcasm that might be building up, which is,
Yep.
when that reaches a certain threshold, that's not good. And
Yeah.
then people just look at a reorg as just like with an eye roll, which many of them do anyway already, because it's such
Yeah.
a frequent thing that happens, and for no apparent good reason at all.
Yeah. I think one of the worst experiences I've seen is when managers or leaders aren't also bought in to the reorg. And so, a big change is announced from the top, and here's this new vision, this new strategy, and here's these new teams, and
Hmm.
the management layer, the folks, doing the work, leadership, are also rolling their eyes. They're also
Yeah.
not clear on what the changes are, why the changes are being made, who's going to be impacted. They haven't been brought along. They haven't been brought into the fold. They haven't been given the vision. They haven't been given the talking points, if you will,
Yeah.
to help their teams. And so they're just sort of, stuck there trying to understand what's happening themselves, when in fact they could be really helpful to the change.
Yeah. But I mean, for that, you need to be able to explain it to them, like in a way that, at least where people can understand context and the reasoning behind it, which, is usually mostly missing, I would say. And
That's right.
they're the ones who need to explain this to their teams, and they're also going to be the first ones to field any questions from their teams that they, unless well equipped, are not going to have any answers to. Like,
Right.
so, I mean, some of that is the crux of middle management, where you're just stuck between decisions that you have very little influence or authority over,
Yep.
and, that you might not agree with, but that at least you'd want to be able to explain to your team in a way that seems sensible, seems to make sense, or at least, when somebody asks, you can explain to them why it happened.
Yep.
Whether it makes sense to them or to you, maybe is then a secondary concern, but at least, well, here's the reason, right? And
Right.
not just, well, here's a reorg. Like, just
Yep.
happy Monday. Like, it's a reorg. You know what to do. The when is a difficult thing. I think I pondered mostly the question when, even leading up to this. And as I talk to clients of, like, for example, like when you bring in for the first time a VP engineering, right? Like your CTO, maybe you're the founder, and you're looking to hire a VP engineering, and maybe the process is so long that in the meanwhile, there's a market shift or a shift in financing or something, that in the end you can't hire that person anymore. So I've experienced that. Clients of mine have experienced that. But there also came the question of when do you communicate this, like this specific thing, like, right? Bringing in a new leader, or maybe even thinking about a management layer. That to me is something where like there's no reason to me to keep that a secret. Like if I'm looking for a VP engineering, that there's a high likelihood that the new person is going to join the team. Usually, especially when I work with a coach, the reasoning for that is going to be well defined, but it's unclear when it's going to happen. I would communicate it anyway. Again, like if there's nothing confidential that needs to be kept in mind, regulations, whatever, right? Those,
Yeah.
or where it's really something that like affects maybe an individual, like a single person that might be
You don't want
singled out in
anyone
this, right?
singled out for sure. Yeah.
But when you're hiring a VP engineering, and this is going to bring a structural change and a new boss to somebody, but then I would like for that to be the least surprise possible.
Avoiding surprises should be a key metric, right?
Yeah, that is true.
Bringing in a new VP, an executive leader, these roles are, being recruited for. I get
Yeah.
there may be times where you are recruiting and you don't want your team to know. I think that's very, very rare. But you have a transparent process. Ideally, the team knows, and if anyone on the team wants to put their hat in the ring, they should have a path to do that. But yeah, you want to communicate that this role is being recruited for, and we're actively looking for it. And here's the why. Here's the vision of what the team would look like when this person comes in, and how that's going to shift, the team, and having FAQs around that and having a plan around that as you're trying to recruit for that individual. And why wouldn't you like set the team up for success so they know that this role is going to, be added to the team, and also it's going to impact the existing team, and also really understanding, okay, what that impact's going to look like over the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days that person joins. I think like that's the key when we talked about it, in our other podcast around difficult conversations, is the preparation, avoiding surprises, getting ahead of the communication plan and what's going to be communicated individually versus at the team level or the company level. What types of communication is it? Is it synchronous? Or is it on a Zoom? Is it, what messages are going out in email versus Slack versus, like there's so many details that need to be covered, and giving managers and leaders FAQs for. I hate to go back to complain, but I will. I'll go back to cynicism mode, which is, I remember one reorg where we were in the middle of a sprint, and the folks making these changes, the strategy team, they were like, we're going to make these changes in this sprint, and then the next sprint, everyone will be focused on these new teams and in their new thing. And I was like, wow, like both of these sprints and future sprints are all going to be impacted. Like this next sprint, you can expect maybe 10% of the work to be completed. Like there's not going to be everything all of a sudden. People are just contributing code, doing their product work, and like in their new seats. The very next sprint, it's like these delusions of leadership and of these changes,
I like that, and that they're going to happen fast. I think maybe this brings us into like why so many of them fail. It's because there's some imagination, especially if you're far enough away from where it lands, where it impacts.
Matthias, they're just going to be productive. At the same way, the very next sprint. Yes. Yeah.
We're going to finish this sprint, and next sprint, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be better.
Yeah.
I
think these are hard things. I've been on the receiving end. I've also been a leader who's had to make changes and implement reorgs. I think it comes down to that humanness. It's like, okay, when communicating, really sharing in very plain terms, what is the reason? How will the org operate once this change is made? And
and how do we know
what are
it's
employees
successful?
going to experience because of this transition? I had an employee come to me. She had been reporting to a manager for years and super concerned because like that manager obviously knew about where she was in her career path and her career progression, and she felt like she was this close to getting promoted and had worked really really hard, and then all of a sudden you're going to another manager who doesn't have that context. You have to reestablish that, and it's like, Like that's such an important detail to think about. Like
Yeah.
here's someone who's like this close, they believe, and then they feel like this is a restart.
Yeah, they basically
Now they have
feel
to
like
prove
this
themselves
need.
to a new manager. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think the one thing I think about when I think about reorgs, and also like how you described it in terms of, thinking about what's the operation mode after this is happening, and what is the
Yep.
benefit
What will
to,
be the benefits? What are the tangible results?
yeah,
Right?
and how will we know this is working and this
Yeah.
is successful? Or even maybe taking one step back, it's like, what is the goal of this reorg?
Right.
What are we trying to achieve other
Yeah.
than,
And how will we know when we've achieved it?
I don't know. It is work, and it's also sometimes easier not having to explain this to people.
Right.
But also, this is why reorgs feel more like superstitions, magical thinking, or delusions, as you said, than
Yeah.
anything else. Because, like, there's an imaginary thing that is aimed for, but that can't be put into
Right.
words, numbers, or anything else. And there's like, why are we doing this? Like, just
Yeah.
because it seems like the right solution,
Yeah.
right? Like, I have a quote here from a fun book, Gary Klein's Sources of Power, where he talks about decision making, and more decision making on an expert and level and a team level, individual level. And he has a specific thing only about reorgs. And he says, quote, corporations adopt fads to build morale or increase motivation without any evidence that these will work. They reorganize to improve efficiency without any definitive evidence that the new structure will be any better. End quote. I
Wow.
love that quote so much. Like, that's
Yes.
everything I think about when I think about reorgs these days.
We'll put that in the show notes. We'll put the link to the book, and that's such a
Yeah.
great quote. Maybe Matthias, this is something we could work on a blog post or something around, questions to ask yourself before implementing a reorg, and
Yeah,
just
for sure.
some frameworks we can help to put in place for folks, how to really outline the goal, how to understand if a reorg is effective. Like, it just feels like there's not a lot out there on this topic. There's a lot of out there on the topic of reorgs, but yeah,
I mean, there's,
considering
this,
how common they are, and
yeah.
how common they come up in coaching sessions as being just disasters, feels like there's room for us to just collectively, as leaders and as managers, to really pause and come up with different frameworks for this.
Yeah, and think about the human angle and the human cost. I mean, in some way, like, we have a point here about, do reorgs really work? I think we
Right.
already established that 70 to 80% don't.
They
And
don't.
in some way, we've already covered all of the patterns
Yeah.
that lead to them not succeeding, right? Like, we talked about, like, there's no visible reasoning behind the change. There's no goal that's set of what this is supposed to achieve. There's no vision of what is coming after. There's low respect for the human cost of this happening. It puts middle management in a bind. Poor communication around it, like, this maybe not at the wrong time, or not sufficient context, or just, in the corporate speak that is all the rage when a company reaches a certain size, where you just can't really divulge anything, so you package it in management speak. Where
Yeah.
do we land this? I mean,
I know we have to wrap this up, but
yeah.
I don't know if there's an easy way to land the conversation outside of the reality that reorgs are incredibly challenging. They require, as a leader and as a manager, it's our responsibility to make sure we're clear on goals, clear on communication. This just doesn't happen with enough rigor for reorgs, and so maybe that's the message here, right?
Yeah, and think about how many this will impact, and
Yeah,
adjust,
come
your
back to the
care
human
and
cost.
preparation and communication accordingly, right?
In
Based
fact,
on,
even the word reorg it's not human.
it's easier to give it a non-human name. then, it makes it easier to think about a few of those angles.
We're not moving people, we're moving resources, Matthias.
Yeah, we're moving resources. This is true. This is what people are. This was cynical, by the way, for anybody listening. Okay, this is a deep topic.
Deep topic, yep.